the spider. Okay, it means the spider, and we will see in verse, I believe it's verse 45, or 41, sorry, 41. In verse 41, we will see the parable of the spider's web and why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala specifically talks about the spider. And we'll talk a little bit about that and we'll go into the detail of that, inshallah. So a few things about this surah is that, let's look at the historical context. Like we said, it's a Meccan surah and it's towards the later stage of the Meccan life of the Prophet ﷺ. Now, the torment of the believers, it was pretty severe, honestly, for the vast majority of the time the Prophet ﷺ was giving da'wah in Mecca. It was very severe, but it had reached, essentially, a critical mass right before the Hijrah. Because at this stage, the Prophet ﷺ no longer had the support of Abu Talib. He no longer had that political protection, and his people, they did not themselves have very much political protection. It was becoming, the Muslims were no longer just a nuisance. Now the Muslims were seen as a viable threat by the pagans, and they thought, now is the time to nip this in the bud and get rid of these people before they become a serious problem in the long term. So the Prophet ﷺ, he was approached by some of his companions, and they said, "O Prophet of Allah, this punishment that they're giving us is so severe. What can we do? It's just becoming, yes, we've handled it for so long, but this is too much. We don't know what to do." And this was not them complaining against the Prophet ﷺ or against Islam, but they're complaining about the punishment that these people were inflicting upon them. That what do we do about these people? That they're just hurting us way too much, and it's not like they're ready to leave Islam, but it's just that we can't fight them back, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had not given them permission to fight back at this point. So in Mecca, the Muslims were not told to fight. They were told that just have sabr, have patience. And when they get to Medina, then they were told, okay, now you can fight these people and you can defend yourselves. But when they're in Mecca, they're just told, okay, have sabr, and they're thinking that our sabr has reached a limit. So they go to the Prophet ﷺ, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as a result, he reveals some of the first verses of this surah. And one of the people who actually approached the Prophet ﷺ was a sahabi by the name of Ka'b ibn Arat radiallahu anhu. And he was a very, very significant sahabi. And he was, he was not one of the wealthy or influential people. Rather, he was one of the, like we mentioned earlier, he was one of the lower rungs of society, Meccan society. So because of that, he was subject to their torment more so than others, to a degree that, they had laid him, upon his back. They had laid him on coals. They had laid him on the hot desert sand, and people would step on his chest. They would stand on it. So, those of us who alhamdulillah, had the opportunity to go to Mecca and Medina, if you just walk on the marble, just at any time of day, usually typically during like the daytime, if you walk on the marble, it's difficult to walk on the marble with just your feet. Even just with socks on, it's hot. So imagine, that's just the marble. Imagine like hot desert sand, what the people will be going through at that moment, and the suffering that the believers were facing then. So they had held him against his back. They had pushed it into the dirt, and it was probably 120, 130 degrees. Just the sand, hot sand is no joke. And his skin, it began to melt. His skin began to melt, and he was bleeding, and he had so many scars on his back that he even later on in life he would show Umar radiallahu anhu, and the Sahabas saw his back, and they said that we've never seen a man like that. Like, we've never seen a person's physical appearance look like this, that his back could look like this. What did he go through? Like, what sacrifice did this man go through? So, he came to the Prophet ﷺ and he said, "O Prophet of Allah, this is what what they're doing to me. This is what I'm going through." So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says at the very beginning, he begins the surah. So the surah begins with Alif Lam Mim, which we have spoken about. Is from the huruf muqatta'at. This is from those disjointed letters, the meaning of which are beyond us. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Ahasiba an-nasu an yutraku an yaqulu amanna wa hum la yuftanun." Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, do the people think that they will be left to say La ilaha illallah or to have iman on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and people are just going to let them live their lives comfortably? Do they think that they will not be put through test? They will not be put through fitna? So this is kind of a wake-up call for all of us. And actually, let's read the second verse and we'll talk a little bit about it. وَلَقَدْ فَتَنَّا الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, indeed we have tested those who came before them. فَلِيَعْلَمَنَّ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ صَدَقُوا وَلِيَعْلَمَنَّ الْكَاذِبِينَ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, by manner of this, Allah will make apparent those who are truthful and honest in their message, that we truly believe in the message of Islam, we truly believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Rasul, or those who are shaky and they say that, well, if it gets a little bit too much, then I'm going to leave. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, by way of these tests and tribulations, we make apparent who are the real believers and those who are just, it's just lip service for them. They're not true believers. So at this moment, when Ka'b radiallahu anhu and the other companions, they had complained of the torment of the mushrikeen, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says that, don't think that people, what did you think this was? That, I'm just going to say, oh yeah, I'm leaving behind, centuries of tradition and religion that you guys are following, and I'm going to do my own thing now. Do you think people are just going to let you go? Do you think people are just going to let you live your life that the life that you want to live? It's not going to be that simple. It's not going to be that straightforward. Rather, these people are definitely going to put you through something. They're going to put you through some severe hardship. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the word yuftanun, that you will be put through a fitna. Fatana in Arabic, is literally, it's the process of melting gold, the process of purifying gold. And that's how you purify gold, is that you take it and you throw it into a furnace, and then it will melt and it will burn all the impurities out. That's how you purify gold. So then, in that same way that Ka'b radiallahu anhu was essentially put to the fire, he was put, laying down on the hot desert sand, and he had, he was burning in that state. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that, you are being purified. By way of this, you are being purified. That definitely the punishment you're going through is severe. You are going through a lot. Don't think you are not. But, what happens at the end of that purification process, that you only have pure gold left over. Like, it's so valuable what's left over. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's saying that even you, Ka'b, and the other companions who are going through this, what's left over after this test is done, this fitna is done, you will just be complete pure. You will not have any impurities. You will not have any of these, all the sins and things that you have accumulated, all these mistakes. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is doing away with all of them by means of these other people who are hurting you. And today, those people, the people who are the earliest people who accepted Islam in Mecca, they hold a status above everyone. Even amongst the Sahaba, there are ranks and there are levels, right? So the people who accepted Islam at the very early stages, when Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was giving da'wah to Mecca and to the Meccans, and the first 40, 50 people, 60 people who accepted Islam in Mecca, they hold the highest status. Right amongst the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right underneath them are those people, the earliest of Sahaba who accepted Islam. Because they were there from day one. They were there when Islam was in its infancy, when the Muslims were tortured and put through severe persecution. Those people, they still held on to their faith. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that by means of these difficulties and hardships, we will find out from amongst you who is truly, a believer in this cause, and those who are just on shaky ground. And the Muslims, they showed, that we are true believers. We are true believers. And when the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam goes to Medina, and then we see how the hypocrites, how they reacted. That they would march out with the Muslims when it came to Uhud, the Battle of Uhud. 1,000 Muslims go out there, and then they see that, oh, well, you know what, they have, so many more soldiers than us, and they're much more prepared, and they have this and that, so let's turn around. And what did the munafiqun do? What did the hypocrites do? 300 of them turned around and left, because that was too much of a test for them. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, by way of these tests, we find out who the real believers are and the fake believers. The fake believers became very apparent and obvious, especially in Medina. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does this time and time again, because it's happened to other people as well. And this is also a promise. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَقَدْ فَتَنَّ الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ. We have tested those people who came before them. So we tested other prophets, we tested other messengers, and we tested other followers of these messengers. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he tells, Yasir, Ammar bin Yasir radiallahu anhu, Ammar bin Yasir radiallahu anhu comes and, his family went through so much hardship. And he says, O Prophet of Allah, look at what we're going through. Where is the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? We really need of this help. And the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he tells him, he says, O Ammar, do you know what the prophets of old have gone through? That there were those prophets where, they would make a hole into the ground. The people would make a hole in the ground, throw the prophet into the ground, and they would bury them up until their neck, and then they would saw their head in half. They would kill them. They would literally saw them in half. They would tie them up against a tree, and then they would, crucify them, or they would shoot an arrow through them, or they would, do all kinds of horrible things to these people. They went through all of these things, and they were killed for this. And today, definitely, we are going through hardship. But, those prophets, they stuck true to their cause. So we should also just have some sabr, and we should get through it. And eventually, inshallah, by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we will. And they did. And Ammar bin Yasir radiallahu anhu holds such a high status in our religion. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he even says, that, O Ali Yasir, he says that, O family of Yasir, that you guys are, وَلَكِنَّكُمْ تَسْتَعْجِلُونَ, you are hurrying this affair. You're saying that, I want to get through this, No, this is a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Bear the test and be patient through this test, And don't worry, goodness will come after. It will take some time, but eventually you will get to that victory, which will come later. And it did. The Prophet ﷺ, he eventually, his promise came true. It rang true. The promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala came true as well. So let's look at just a couple of the verses. We'll look at this one particular verse I wanted to speak about, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he makes an allusion to the beliefs of the pagans. So the pagans, they were involved in idol worship, as we know. So where did they come up with the ideas for these idols? Like, how do you get all of these hundreds of idols? And it's going to be kind of difficult for them to be original, or they're just making up names and stuff. So actually, what these people had been doing is that they would remember their, and this is how shaitan actually gets people to engage in idol worship. These people, they were commemorating pious people of their previous generations, people who were very much looked up to in society, people who were very pious and very, God-fearing, righteous people. Those people, what happened was, several generations ago, let's say a few hundred generations ago, that one of them would be really a standout kind of guy who would always be just in his little monastery. He would be worshiping, or the lady, she would be just constantly devoting herself to God, and everyone knows them as this is that religious person, this is that pious person. People would look up to them, even though the people were not pious, but they recognized piety. So after they passed away, shaitan would come and whisper to these people. They would say that you don't want to forget this person. You don't want to forget this pious person who passed away. So what should you do? Well, you should make something to remember them by. Okay, well, what can we do? Well, why don't you just, draw a picture of this person, just so that you can keep a picture of them with you, and you can remember them in that manner, that, this, he was so pious, and she was so pious, she was so God-fearing, and that will help you, remember God. People would engage in that. So shaitan would whisper these ideas into the hearts and minds of people. Now, that generation would, draw some pictures and have some kind of illustrations, and then they would pass on. And then the next, 2 or 3 generations would come, and shaitan would tell them that, look, these pictures are going to fade, and, they're not very accurate. Why don't you make it a little bit nicer? Why don't you make some kind of structure? Yeah, that's not a bad idea. Okay, so let's build something, that resembles it. So they would go and make some type of statue, some type of idol. And then, shaitan would wait another, 1 or 2 generations until he would come and whisper again that, these people, they were not just regular people. They were like intermediaries between you and God. That's what they are. They're intermediaries, and if you ask them, then they will be able to intercede for you on behalf of on your behalf, and they will be able to ask God for whatever you need. So that's what you should do. You should ask for these people to talk to God on your behalf. So they would engage in idol worship because they think that, this idol is speaking to God for me. And this is how shaitan would, after generation, he would get people to fall into paganism, into shirk, which is, of course, the worst of sins. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he mentions that in verse 25. He says, وَقَالَ إِنَّمَا اتَّخَذْتُم مِّن دُونِ اللَّهِ أَوْثَانًا مَوَدَّةً بَيْنِكُمْ فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا. Indeed, you have only taken these idols as a means of, out of affection and love, and you're worshipping them aside from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. ثم يوم القيامة يكفر بعضكم ببعض ويلعن بعضكم بعضا ومأواكم النار وما لكم من ناصرين. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, on the day of judgment, that groups of you will, they will do kufr. It's saying groups of you will say that, no, I completely disagree. But what is this guy's belief? No, this is unacceptable. I don't agree with this belief. And other groups of you will curse one another, and you will basically turn on one another. You will turn on one another. And this will definitely happen on the day of judgment when, those people who are pious people centuries and centuries ago, they will come forward and, that they will see that, 400 years later, these people made an idol out of me and started worshiping it. I was not, a pagan, I was a monotheist, and these people have made idols about me. So the person will curse them, saying, how dare you make me like this? And the people who are worshiping that idol, they will say that, no, this is what you wanted. And then they will get into arguments and fights on the day of judgment. And of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward the monotheist, and he will, destroy the pagans and the idol worshippers on the day of judgment. وَمَا لَكُم مِّن نَاصِرِينَ. You will not have anyone to help you on the day of judgment. Because what are the idols going to do on the day of judgment? Those are things that are inanimate objects. Literally, it's like, worshipping a pen or something like that. What's it going to do for you on the day of judgment? Is it going to speak up on your behalf? Absolutely not. Now, after this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he brings a few of the stories of different prophets. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings the story of Nuh alayhi salam, Ibrahim alayhi salam, Lut alayhi salam, and Shu'aib alayhi salam in this surah. And in particular, let's look at these 3 stories. The story of Nuh alayhi salam, Ibrahim alayhi salam, Lut alayhi salam. So all 3 of these groups of people, they went through severe persecution at the hands of their people. Nuh alayhi salam, of course, the people were mocking him, ridiculing him, and they were planning their plans against him. Ibrahim alayhi salam, they literally, threw him into a fire, right? We talk about, tests and difficulties. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about, remember at the very beginning, we said that, وَهُمْ لَا يُفْتَنُونَ, are they not going to be tested? So this is literally that test by fire, which is what Ibrahim alayhi salam was put through. Then Lut alayhi salam, that he was, him and just essentially there were very, very few believers in his city. All of the people were engaged in this, in this very, very terrible and filthy action. So Lut alayhi salam was the only one from amongst the people, him and just like a handful of people, and they were persecuted by their people and they were being attacked and they had to flee as well. So Nuh alayhi salam, he fled his people. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him a way out. Ibrahim alayhi salam, he fled his people. He ran. He had to leave. What else could he do? Lut alayhi salam, he had to flee by night with his people. What else could he do? And he had to escape from those amongst his people who were engaged in vice and evil. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings 3 stories of prophets who they fled from their people as a result of oppression. So this is kind of telling the Muslims that, look, you are going through hardships and tests, and you have been for the past 12, 13 years. These other prophets also went through years and years and years of hardship and trials and tests at the hands of their people. But what happened after? We gave them a way out and they left. So it's kind of foreshadowing that you've been through hardships, now we're going to give you guys a way out too, and you'll be able to escape as well. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also brings the story of Shu'aib alayhi salam. Shu'aib alayhi salam is the prophet that Musa alayhi salam, he fled to, he went to Madian. When Musa alayhi salam left from Misr, he left from Egypt and he escaped from his people. The person whose house he stayed at and the man whose daughter he married was Shu'aib alayhi salam. There's another prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and so Shu'aib alayhi salam is kind of that archetype for the refuge. Okay, so the other 3 prophets we just mentioned, Nuh, Ibrahim, and Lut alayhi salam, they fled from a trial and tribulation. And Shu'aib alayhi salam was the location where another prophet, Musa alayhi salam, had fled to. So it's like they are both of these things are represented basically. The place of fleeing and the place that you are fleeing to. The place of fleeing is Makkah, you're fleeing from Makkah, and the place that is being fled to is Medina, which is essentially what Shu'aib alayhi salam represents in the surah here. So it's telling the Prophet ﷺ and telling the companions of the Prophet ﷺ that you are going to run away, but then you will also have somewhere to run to as well. So do not be grieved by this. And essentially, this is a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and it will pass. So it's a reminder for us that, today we are going through a lot of difficulties. Undoubtedly, we're going through hardships and difficulties, and believers are, so in some way, shape, and form, it's not easy to be a Muslim. And, we're going through persecution. It's nothing compared to what other people are going through in other parts of the world, especially Muslims in other parts of the world or throughout our history. But it's still something. We should not, it's still something. It's still some difficulty. We should not, trivialize it and say that, oh, you guys are, suck it up. It's whatever. We shouldn't say that. We should acknowledge that, yes, it's difficult. It's a hardship we're going through. However, by complaining about it, we're not going to be able to get through it. We have to acknowledge that it's a difficulty, and we have to say that, I need the assistance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to get through this. And I will practice as much sabr as I can. I will use the resources available to me, but I can't, I should not trivialize it and ignore it and just say that, no, this is nothing. Nor should I think that this is the end of my life and, how dare we go through these things. No, other people also went through these things as well, and they got through it. So eventually, inshallah, by the will of Allah, you will also get through whatever it is that you are going through. So now if we go to verse 41, where the namesake of the surah actually comes from, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes mention of the spider here in this verse 41. And in this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in this verse, He draws a parable. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala draws like a parable, an example between the spider and the web of the spider. Okay, so the spider and how it weaves its web, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala compares that with the worship that the pagans involve themselves in with their idols. So let's take a look at the verse first. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, مَثَلُ الَّذِينَ اتَّخَذُوا مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ أَوْلِيَاءَ كَمَثَلِ الْعَنْكَبُوتِ اتَّخَذَتْ بَيْتًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that the example of those who have taken anyone or anything aside from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as their wali. Okay, what awliya is, jama is plural of wali. Wali is a friend or a protector, a guardian. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says those who take, aside from Allah, other guardians, other protectors, other friends, they turn to them for protection and for help, then what is their example? Who are they like? They are like كَمَثَلِ الْعَنْكَبُوتِ. They are like the spider اتَّخَذَتْ بَيْتًا, that has created a web, it has made a house. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِنَّ أَوْهَنَ الْبُيُوتِ لَبَيْتُ الْعَنْكَبُوتِ. Indeed, the feeblest and weakest of homes is the house of the spider. It's a spider web. لو كانوا يعلمون, if only they knew, if only these people knew. So let's take a look at this. That firstly, the house, the house or home of a person is usually the place where a person feels safest, right? It's a house or it's a place where a person seeks as refuge. It's a place that people go to in times of, be it physical distress, emotional distress, psychological distress, financial, whatever it might be. The person is going through hardship. The place that they find some type of solace and comfort is their home. So they go and they retreat to their house. Now, their house is typically fortified, not just physically fortified. Obviously, you want a house that's sturdy and it withstands the elements, but, it's filled with those things which will offer you solace and it will give you comfort. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that, the house of the spider, with the spider web, it is none of these things. If you think about it, it's not a place of comfort. It's not a place of solace. It's not even physically strong or fortified. I mean, it's perhaps, the spider web will be attached to sturdy firmaments like a tree, or sometimes between cars, the spiders will, or on corners of your room or in your house or something. But the web itself is very weak. It's very feeble. When we walk through a spider web, we just quickly brush it off out of our face and we just keep going. It disappears just like that. So the web itself is very weak. The house of the spider, where the spider itself will stay and it will reside, that's a very weak place. So it's very weak physically, and it's not a place of comfort and solace. Rather, what is a spider's web? A spider's web is where animals are, typically, or little insects and things are actually trapped. Little insects and bugs and flies and mosquitoes, whatever it might be, will get trapped in the web of the spider, and then they won't be able to move because it's sticky. So they'll get stuck to it, and then the spider will come in, and it will it will end up killing that whatever that fly or mosquito or type of insect might be, kills it, and it will eat it. So it will devour it, and it's actually a trap. So it's not just a house. It's not a place of protection. It's actually a death trap. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that these people making these other idols and figures and things like that, taking them as gods and goddesses, aside from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's not a protection for them. Like, they surround themselves with all of these idols thinking that, we'll be protected. We are, we have these four walls around us, but they didn't have four walls, they had hundreds of idols. If all these idols protecting us, all of our gods and goddesses will be here, they will take care of us and look after us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says it's just like that spider's web. It doesn't offer any real protection. You can just easily swat it down, you can blow on it and it's going to fall down. That's how weak it is. It's very feeble. Unlike other animals, for example, like birds and things like that, a bird will make its nest out of materials from outside, and it will be somewhat sturdy. It will be somewhat strong. That even if it falls out of a tree, that nest will somehow still hold firm. Other animals like beavers and things, they will build actual dams. They will go and bring large pieces of wood and things like that to build their homes. Unlike the spider, which actually makes it from within itself, it shoots its spider web out from its own, insides. Unlike these other animals and other creatures. So the same example is for these pagans and polytheists. They're not getting anything from outside. Like Revelation, Islam, Wahi, all of this because it's an external source. It comes from God Himself. It's something that we are given, and then we use that. We utilize what Allah has given us. We don't just make it up ourselves, right? The 5 daily prayers that we pray, we didn't just think of it magically, let's pray 5 times and here's how we should pray and we should pray at these times. We didn't make these things up. These were tools given to us, and then with that we were, it was constructed. Our home, to say, our fortress, our means of solace and protection was constructed. Whereas these pagans and idol worshippers, they made up this whole idea of, worshipping these former pious people, be it, or just random deities, be it the sun god or the moon god. They made these things up. It came from within. It came from within themselves, and it shows how weak it is. It's very feeble. And we notice, the weakness of this is that one of the primary weaknesses is if you just, for example, the spider's web is attached to, let's say it's attached to these, like, not 5 fingers, but like 5 little firmaments, okay? If you just take, just the firmaments and you just move it away, you don't even have to touch the spider's web. If you just move away or take away what it's attached to, the web itself will fall down. The spider itself will fall down. It's not going to stand up because you removed its, whatever it was attached to and holding on to. People think that, we are attached and holding on to the Kaaba, but that's not the case. The Kaaba is just a place of focus. That's it. That's a place of centrality where we can turn to. It's a uniform direction for us. But if the Kaaba disappears, or it's destroyed, so what? We're not going to be confused and think that, well, today I'm going to pray to India, and tomorrow I'm going to pray to Australia, and then I'm going to pray to Antarctica, and the other day I'm going to pray towards Mars. Not going to do that. We'll still pray towards Mecca. We're still going to pray towards the Kaaba, even if the Kaaba is not there. And then we'll come back and we'll restore the Kaaba. We will rebuild it. It's only a sense of direction, because we're not praying, to the Kaaba. We're praying in the direction of the Kaaba, but we're praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're praying for God. We're not praying for that. Whereas the idols, the idol worshippers and the pagans, if you take away their focus of worship, what are they going to do? If you remove their idols, then they're going to be looking desperately, I need the idol to hurry up and pray. That's not the case. That's not the case for our religion. If you take away the musalla, the janabas, so what? You'll pray on the carpet. Okay, if you can't pray on the carpet, you'll pray outside, or you'll pray on the grass, you'll pray on the concrete, you can pray anywhere. All of that is, even if you don't have water, you can make tayammum. You can just hit the ground and do your tayammum, and you can pray right there, even without water. So our religion is so much more vast and protective, in that you don't lose the protection of Islam just because you don't have a direction, right? Even if you don't know what the Kaaba is, you can still do your best to figure it out. And even if you're 100% wrong, but you did your best, your salah still counts. It's still valid, no problem. Whereas Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, that this spider, what's it going to do if it doesn't have anywhere to attach its web to? It's got nothing. It's just going to keep running around the ground left and right aimlessly. That's it. And it won't find food, and it's going to die of starvation. Whereas it's the same way with the pagans and the idol worshippers. What are they going to do if they don't have an idol? What, they're going to hurry up and try and craft something so they could put it there and start worshipping it. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, the weakest house is the house of the spider. In the same way, the weakest form of religion, the weakest form of worship is this paganism, this idol worship is absurd, it's silly. Some other, other ideologies and religions, they might be somewhat formidable when it comes to debating us, like us Muslims against perhaps, the Christian theology, Judaism, or atheism. It might be somewhat of a challenge to debate them. Debating polytheism or paganism is the silliest thing, right? It's not even a waste of, you shouldn't even waste your breath, because it's so silly to defeat that argument. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, it's just like the house of the spider. You just blow on it, just, wipe it with your hand, you just smack it away, and it's gone, it disappears. In the same way, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, don't give them any importance, don't worry about them, just ignore them. Now, if we go to verse 46, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, again, He gives some type of foreshadowing. He gives a little bit of foreshadowing to the Prophet ﷺ and the believers at the time. So what does He say? He says, وَلَا تُجَادِلُ أَهْلَ الْكِتَابِ إِلَّا بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and do not debate or argue with the people of the book except with that which is good. Okay, by that which is good, in a good manner, with adab and with proper manners and etiquettes. So the question is, well, there were no Ahlul Kitab living in Mecca, and this is a Meccan surah. So what's the deal? So obviously Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is kind of telling them that, soon you're going to go to a place where there will be Ahlul Kitab, where the people of the book will be there, who are of course the Jewish tribes. And when you do interact with them, when you do bump into them, make sure that you interact with them in a good way. Don't just go in there and start being harsh with them, like you've kind of hard to deal with these mushrikeen. Mushrikeen are a little bit different, right? They're not Ahlul Kitab. But these people are, so they have some type of foundation that you can, find that middle ground. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about that. He says, إِلَّا الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا مِنْهُمْ, except those people who commit oppression. So if they're violent and aggressive towards you, then words are not going to cut it. If somebody charges at you with a sword or a knife, you can't just, try to be nice and diplomatic in that situation. You have to defend your life. So this is in regards to some of those situations. وَقُولُوا آمَنَّا بِالَّذِي أُنزِلَ إِلَيْنَا وَأُنزِلَ إِلَيْكُمْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that, and He commands the believers, and say this to those people that, we have believed in that which has been revealed upon you and what has been revealed upon us as well. وَإِلَهُنَا وَإِلَهُكُمْ إِلَهٌ وَاحِدٌ وَإِلَهُنَا وَإِلَهُكُمْ وَاحِدٌ. And your Lord and our Lord is the same. We have one singular Lord. The one who revealed the book to you is the one who revealed the book to us as well. وَنَحْنُ لَهُ مُسْلِمُونَ, and we are for Him. Muslims, we have submitted ourselves in worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So again, this is foreshadowing that you should give da'wah in this manner to these people. Then it's going to be different from the way that you give da'wah to these guys. It's going to be vastly different. So the believers are kind of told early on. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told them early on, before they even get to Makkah, that prepare yourselves for this situation. And then again in verse 56, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives a little bit more foreshadowing where He says, Ya ibadiya alladhina amanu. He says, "O my slaves, those who have believed from amongst my slaves." So again, the believers, the Muslims who are living in Makkah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inna ardi wasi'a. Indeed, my earth, my land is vast. My land is vast. فَإِيَّايَ فَاعْبُدُونَ. And so He says that, and so you should only worship me. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that my earth is vast. Why is He saying my land is vast? That, do not feel yourselves constricted here. Everything belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as in it's kind of alluding to you might be able to travel in the near future, or don't think that this is the only place that we can worship God because the Kaaba is here. You can فَإِيَّايَ فَاعْبُدُونَ. Remember, Allah's earth is vast, and just worship Allah only. Allah says only worship me. So He doesn't say, oh, this is the Kaaba, you only have to worship me here and that's it. No, you can go other places and still engage in the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then if we go to, we'll go to the final part of the surah here, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in verse 65, He talks about remember at the beginning of the surah we talked about how some of those, the believers had come to the Prophet ﷺ and had complained of the hardships that they were being subjected to and they were being tormented with. So the Prophet ﷺ, he had recited upon them the verses that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told them that, look, these hardships are a means of finding out who is true and who is false. Because, there are those amongst you who, when they get tried or tested with a little bit of hardship, then all of a sudden they turn away. They're like, oh, no, never mind. I don't, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to be a Muslim. This is way too difficult for me. What do you mean fasting 30 days in a row? No, I can't do that. Praying 5 times a day? Nope, that's not for me. So this is, a means of test for some people. Other times, the ease and comfort that comes with it, it'll be a test for people. Imagine that, the ease and comfort that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give people, that might be what causes a person to turn away from God. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, He gives the example of the disbelievers. He says, فَإِذَا رَكِبُوا فِي الْفُلْكِ دَعُوا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, when these mushrikeen, these disbelievers, when they get onto the ship, onto a boat, and they get out and they go out into water, then they call out to Allah. So they make sincere dua to Allah. Allah, please keep us protected. Allow me to get home safe and this and that. For you and I, it's like we get on a plane and then all of a sudden we remember all of our du'as and we start making dua to Allah and asking Him for help and make sure we get there safely, this and that. And then what happens? فَلَمَّا نَجَّاهُمْ إِلَى الْبَرِّ إِذَا هُمْ يُشْرِكُونَ. When Allah rescues them and He takes them to the land, then all of a sudden they go back to their shirk. They go back to the same life that they were living. So when they were in a scary situation, when they were uncertain of what was going to happen to them, they became very mukhlis, they became very sincere in their worship. All of a sudden, as soon as they get, that's when they're safe and things are looking good again and things are looking up again, they forget about God. They forget about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is a serious question for you and I, that, are we, I'm not going to say are we exactly like these people, but we have similar qualities. Because when things become tough, that's when we really this is like natural, that when things become really difficult in our lives, we turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is a good thing. It's a good thing that, something brings us back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But when that difficulty is lifted and when things become easier, do we forget Allah? And definitely our relationship will begin to, weaken a little bit, just because, when life became tough, that's when we realized that I don't have anyone or anything who is as dependent, who I can depend on as much as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But when life becomes easier, definitely we will tend to, be a little bit happier and a little bit less, let me sit down and just make dua for 30 minutes. But it should not be that we forget about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala entirely. That scare that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala might give us by way of a test or a calamity, this might be a way of turning us back to Him. So we turn back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But then, when the calamity, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is happy that, that we have turned back to Him, so He might lift the calamity from us. He might lift that difficulty. So when He lifts it, that doesn't mean that we just turn away from Him and we forget about Him entirely. No, it means that, we realize, okay, I was really distracted from my purpose in life. I was distracted from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by all of these things. And when God tested me with these things and I turned back to Him, then, He kind of woke me up from that ghafla, from that heedlessness. So let me, definitely, I'll go back to, like my life and things. However, I'm not going to live a life of heedlessness as I was doing earlier before the calamity struck me. So this is a wake-up call for the disbelievers, and of course, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is kind of warning us that, hey, don't be like these people and don't fall into the same thing that they did. And then He subhanahu wa ta'ala, He ends the surah, He says, وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا لَنَهْدِيَنَّهُمْ سُبُلَنَا وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ لَمَعَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. As for those people who struggle and they strive in our path, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will guide them to all of His paths. Now there are many paths. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that there are many paths, and there are those people who spend their time, who spend their life seeking knowledge. There are people who spend their time studying in madrasa, studying in Islamic institutes, and they spend years and years studying, and then after they spend their time teaching. Others will spend their time writing books. Others will spend their time debating. Others will spend their time doing charity work. Others will establish masajid. Others will do all kinds of different things. There are many ways to earn that success. All of it stems from our deen. All of it stems from Islam. All of it stems from Quran and the Sunnah. That there are different paths that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made available. There are many callings in life, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says the one who sincerely struggles and he strives and works hard, that I am going to do this for the sake of Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says we will give him one of these roads to take. We will give him one of these roads and he'll be able to take it, and he will reach to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. By way of charity work, a person might enter Jannah. By way of just teaching other people the deen, they might enter Jannah. By way of establishing some place, by way of whatever it might be, by way of da'wah work, anything a person might Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala might find for them, or He will open for them a different way to achieve that success. وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ لَمَعَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with the muhsinin, the people of ihsan, those people who live their lives knowing that Allah is watching me. So they live their lives for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not for anyone else. So all the efforts and hard work that they do that because I know Allah is watchful over me and I'm doing it for Him. So with that, inshallah, we'll conclude Salatul Ankabut, that definitely I'm sure we are going through hardship in our life. All of us, if today life is easy, tomorrow maybe life will be difficult. Maybe today life is difficult, maybe tomorrow inshallah it'll be easy. So whatever happens, we keep our focus and our attention on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, knowing that He is ever watchful over us, knowing that we are ever attached to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as a result of that, inshallah, if we keep working and keep striving and struggling through this life, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will surely guide us and give us success at the end of that journey, inshallah. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Jazakumullahu khairan. Wassalamu alaikum.